She laughed the moment the pen left his hand. Not under her breath. Not politely. A real laugh, sharp, satisfied, the kind a person makes when they have been waiting for something for a long time and it has finally arrived. James Calloway set the pen down without looking at her. Across the table, her lawyer straightened his stack of papers and allowed himself a small smile he did not bother hiding. Through the glass wall of the conference room, Tyler Marsh stood in the lobby in a charcoal coat, hands in his pockets, watching. Angela glanced at him, making sure he saw. She turned back to James. "You'll be okay, James. Single dads figure it out. People do more with less all the time." James said nothing. He stood, buttoned his jacket once, and walked out of the conference room. In the corridor outside, a woman in a uniform he recognized from the airfield nodded as he passed. "Good afternoon, Mr. Calloway." He nodded back and kept walking. Angela was still laughing. Her lawyer was still smiling. Tyler Marsh had already taken out his phone. None of them noticed the uniform. None of them knew what it meant. They would. In 3 days, they would know exactly what it meant. James Calloway had grown up in a house where money was not discussed at the table. Not because there wasn't any. Because his father, Robert Calloway, had spent 40 years watching what happened to men who talked about what they had. He had watched neighbors lose things to people who found out about those things before they should have. He had watched friends get taken apart by divorces that moved too fast and lawyers who knew too much. He had decided early that the safest vault in the world was silence. He had passed that decision to his son the same way he passed everything, not in speeches, not in formal lessons. In the way he lived. The house James grew up in sat on 12 acres outside Clarksville, Tennessee. From the road it looked ordinary. 2 stories, white siding, a porch that needed painting. The kind of house people drove past without slowing down. Behind it, across a dirt road that wound through a stand of old oaks, was a metal hangar his father had built in 1987. Inside the hangar were 2 planes. James had his first solo flight at 16. His father had stood on the grass strip with his arms crossed and watched without expression until the wheels touched down clean. Then he had walked to the plane, opened the door, and said one thing. "Your grandfather built this runway. Don't forget that." James hadn't forgotten. He was 38 now. He ran a small equipment repair business out of a workshop on the edge of town. Welding, hydraulics, the kind of mechanical work that kept farms and small contractors moving. He drove a 10-year-old truck with a cracked side mirror he kept meaning to replace. He wore the same work boots from October through April. He did not own a tailored coat. He also held a controlling interest in Callaway Air Holdings, 3 hangars across 2 states, a fleet of 6 aircraft, a Part 135 charter certification that his father had built, and James had quietly doubled in the 12 years since Robert's death. The company operated under a Delaware holding entity. Its name appeared nowhere near James Calloway's tax filings in any form a casual search would find. His accountant was a woman named Ruth Hendricks who had worked with his father since 1989 and who communicated exclusively by telephone and sealed mail. His daughter, Maisie, was 8. She had James's patience and her grandmother's eyes, warm, watchful, always slightly amused by things other people took seriously. She attended school 4 miles from the house. She read above her grade level and had strong opinions about which dinosaurs were underrated. She kept a notebook she called her Important Ideas book, that James was not allowed to read but that he suspected contained mostly drawings of horses and several detailed plans for a treehouse she intended to build herself. Every evening without exception he was home by 5:30. He cooked dinner badly and with complete commitment. He helped with homework even when the homework had passed the edge of what he confidently knew. He read to Maisie every night at 8, whatever she chose, no negotiation. He had read 3 horse books in a row and was currently on a biography of Amelia Earhart that Maisie had selected with obvious strategic intent. He did not talk about the planes. Angela had never asked. He had noticed that, early in their marriage, the specific shape of her curiosity, which moved toward things with visible price tags and did not linger over things that required context to understand. The hangar on his father's property had been, to Angela, a building full of old machines belonging to a dead man. She had walked through it once in the first year of the marriage and not returned. She had no idea what the machines were worth. She had no idea what the certification was worth. She had no idea that on any given Tuesday a charter booking through Calloway Air Holdings generated more in a single flight than James's repair business made in a week. She had spent 7 years looking at the truck and the work boots and the cracked side mirror, and seeing exactly what she had decided to see. Tyler Marsh had seen something different. He had been introduced to Angela at a corporate event 18 months ago. He worked in commercial real estate, the kind that involved development groups and investment funds and conference calls with people in cities Angela had decided she should be living in. He wore expensive shoes. He remembered the names of wines. He had told Angela, James learned this later, that her husband was not hiding his potential. He was hiding theirs. It was a sentence designed for someone who had already decided to be convinced. Angela had been ready for exactly that sentence for a long time. She told him on a Wednesday evening in November. Maisie was at her grandmother's for the week. Angela had waited for that. James understood this later, understood the calculation behind it, the preference for a scene without a witness. She came home at 7, set her bag on the counter, and told him she wanted a divorce. She said it clearly, without hesitation, the way a person speaks when they have rehearsed something until the rehearsal is gone, and only the words remain. She said she needed someone whose ambitions matched hers. She said she had spent 7 years waiting for James to want something more and had finally accepted that more was not something he was built for. She said Maisie would be better served by stability, by a household with resources and direction and a social environment appropriate to the life Angela intended to build. James stood at the kitchen counter with a dish towel in his hand and listened to all of it. He did not put the towel down. She had already chosen the attorney. The signing would be at a law office downtown on Thursday of the following week. She mentioned the location the way she might mention a restaurant, casually, as information. At the foot of the stairs, she stopped. She turned back with the expression of someone remembering a small errand. The property in your father's name, the hangar out on Route 12. Is there anything in there actually worth something? Because my attorney is going to ask and I'd rather know before he does. James looked at her for one full second. In that second he understood the shape of everything, the timing of the divorce, the choice of attorney, the specific question posed at the foot of the stairs in a casual voice at 7:15 on a Wednesday evening. He said, "Just old equipment. Dad's stuff." She nodded as if that confirmed something she had already assumed, and went upstairs. He stood at the kitchen sink for a long time after the light under the bedroom door went dark. Then he called his cousin Daniel, who was not a lawyer but whose brother-in-law was, and who knew every name worth knowing in 3 counties. He said, "I need to know everything about Tyler Marsh." Daniel came on a Saturday morning with coffee and a manila folder, and the expression of a man who had information he wished he didn't. He put the folder on the kitchen table. He sat down. He pushed the folder across. Tyler Marsh was not simply a man who wore expensive shoes. Tyler Marsh was a senior partner in a development group called Meridian Land Ventures, a private equity outfit that had spent the last 8 years acquiring underperforming aviation properties across the Southeast. Their strategy was documented in an investor presentation Daniel's brother-in-law had located through a contact at a commercial title company. They identified regional charter operators with strong route authority and aging or distracted ownership. They were patient. They waited for the soft moments, retirement, illness, divorce, when family-held aviation assets could be reached through a door that the owner didn't know was open. Calloway Air Holdings had been on their radar for 6 years. The investor presentation referenced it by name. James read the page twice. He set it face down on the table. He asked Daniel one question. When did Tyler Marsh first contact Angela? Daniel told him. 22 months ago. Not 18, as James had believed. 22. 4 months before Angela had introduced Tyler at a dinner party as a colleague she had just met. James folded his hands on the table. He sat that way for a long time. He thought about Maisie. He thought about the treehouse plans in the important ideas book. He thought about his father standing on the grass strip with his arms crossed watching a 16-year-old bring a plane down clean. He thought about the runway his grandfather had built. He closed the folder. He thanked Daniel. He walked him to the door. He went back to the kitchen table and sat alone for a while longer. Then he called Ruth Hendricks. He said, "Ruth, I need everything locked and documented by Thursday morning." She said, "It already is, James. It has been for 30 years. He closed his eyes. His father had built the wall before James had known there was anything to protect. Before Angela. Before Tyler Marsh. Before the investor presentation with the company name in it. The wall was already there. He just needed to show someone where it was. The law office was downtown, 3rd floor, glass-fronted. Clean waiting room, fresh coffee, the particular atmosphere of a place designed to make people feel that difficult things were being handled competently. Angela arrived first. She wore a blazer James recognized from a firm dinner 2 years ago. Her attorney, a man named Philip Cole, smooth, confident, the posture of someone who considered courtrooms his natural habitat, sat beside her with a portfolio open in front of him. Tyler Marsh was in the lobby downstairs. James had seen him through the window of the cab. James sat down across from Angela and her attorney. He picked up the pen. He signed every page without reading them. His own attorney, Ruth's referral, a quiet woman named Sandra Park who had reviewed every line 3 days earlier and circled nothing that concerned her, sat beside him and said nothing. When the last page was signed, James set the pen down. Slowly. Deliberately. Angela laughed. It was a real laugh. Warm with triumph, sharp at the edge. She tilted her head back the way people do when they are not trying to hide that they are enjoying something. "You'll be okay, James. Single dads figure it out." Her attorney pressed his lips together. His shoulders moved slightly. James stood. He buttoned his jacket. He looked at Angela for 1 full second, not with anger, not with anything she could use, and walked out. In the corridor, a woman in a Calloway Air Holdings uniform was waiting for the elevator. She looked up when James appeared. "Good afternoon, Mr. Calloway. Captain Reyes asked me to confirm your Thursday flight is cleared." James nodded. "Tell him we're good." She smiled and stepped into the elevator. Behind him, through the glass wall of the conference room, Philip Cole had stopped smiling. He had heard the uniform say the name. He had heard the name before. In a filing. In a corporate registry. In a place that told a different story than the crack-side mirror and the work boots had suggested. He did not say anything to Angela. He would. In 2 days he would say quite a lot. Angela called the holding company's registered agent on Monday. She had found the name through a commercial database Tyler had told her about, the kind that aggregated corporate filings across states and returned results that a simple internet search would not. Calloway Air Holdings LLC. Delaware domiciled. President and sole trustee, James Robert Calloway. 3 hangars. 6 aircraft. A Part 135 operating certification with active federal contracts. Annual revenue that Philip Cole, when she called him in a voice that had gone very still, told her he was not at liberty to estimate without the audited financials, but that based on comparable operators was not a small number. She asked him what the trust structure meant for her claim. He told her. Irrevocable. Spendthrift provisions. Established 31 years earlier and reinforced in layers since. Every instrument designed, as the founding document stated, to ensure that the company remained in the Calloway family line and was not accessible through any marital dissolution proceeding. She asked him if there was any way through it. He told her that was a more complicated question and that he would need time to research it. She did not tell Tyler that evening. She sat in her apartment. She had moved out the week before, an efficiency on the east side of town, the kind of address that was the wrong shape for the life she had been designing, and thought about 22 months. About dinners. About the things Tyler had said about James and about the truck and about potential hiding, and what it meant for a man to keep a woman from the life she deserved. She thought about the uniform in the corridor. She thought about the name on the elevator. For the first time since November, she was not certain about the next move. She called Tyler. He told her Philip Cole was one of the best in the state, and that there were always angles worth exploring and that she should trust the process. She said she would. She did not entirely believe him. The custody modification hearing was held on a Tuesday morning. Angela had filed for primary physical custody of Maisie on the grounds of financial instability and inadequate educational environment. Philip Cole had done the filing. The language was careful, professional, selected with the precision of a man who had done this before and believed the argument was solid. James sat at the respondent's table beside Sandra Park. Maisie was at school. James's mother had picked her up at 7 and would keep her until he called. Sandra Park had one accordion file in front of her and a cup of black coffee. She had not appeared nervous in the 3 meetings James had had with her, and she did not appear nervous now. She had the particular stillness of someone who had already finished the work. Philip Cole stood and made his case. He was skilled. He spoke about stability, educational environment, demonstrated income, the importance of a consistent professional framework for a child's development. He used the phrase limited verifiable income. He said it twice. When he sat down, Sandra Park stood up. She walked to the bench and placed one item on it first. A business card. Cream stock. Black ink. Calloway Air Holdings LLC. President and sole trustee, James R. Calloway. Then the file. 3 decades of audited financial statements. The corporate structure of Calloway Air Holdings, the Delaware parent, the hangar leases, the fleet certifications, the FAA operating authority, the active federal charter contracts, the educational trust established to Maisie's name on the day of her birth by her grandfather, currently holding sufficient funds to provide for her complete education through postgraduate study. And last, a sealed submission to the FAA and the Tennessee Secretary of State's office documenting Meridian Land Ventures' 6-year pattern of attempted acquisition of Calloway Air Holdings through personal relationship channels. The document named Tyler Marsh by his full legal name. It named Philip Cole's firm in a footnote. The judge was a woman named Eleanor Briggs. She had been on the family bench for 19 years. She read at her own pace. She did not look up for 2 full minutes. When she looked up, she did not look at James. She looked at Philip Cole. "Counsel," she said, "would you like to revisit your characterization of the respondent's income and professional standing?" From the gallery, Tyler Marsh stood up. He picked up his coat. He walked the length of the road to the aisle and let himself out through the courtroom doors without speaking. The door closed behind him with a soft, certain sound. Lauren, Angela, did not turn to watch him go. Judge Briggs denied the motion to modify custody from the bench in 2 sentences. James was granted full legal and physical custody of Maisie effective immediately. He did not smile. He turned to Sandra Park and gave her a single nod. Then he walked out into the fluorescent hallway. His mother was at the end of the hall with Maisie beside her, the girl holding a paper bag from the diner across the street, wearing her jacket half on in the particular way she wore everything, thoroughly her own. Maisie looked up at her father. She said, "Did we win, Dad?" He crouched down so his face was level with hers. He said, "We didn't lose anything, Maisie." "That's better." She considered this. Then she opened the paper bag and handed him a wrapped breakfast sandwich. "Mom's assistant called Grandma this morning," she said carefully. James took the sandwich. He stood up. "I know." They rode down to the parking garage in silence, the 3 of them. His mother didn't say anything. She put her hand on his arm once in the elevator, and that was all that needed to be said.